Welcome back to another episode of Gora the Explorer, and today we're going to talk about moving in with the in-laws. As you know, within the South Asian community, this is one thing that generally happens, especially with our UK, Kenyan clients, and those that kind of follow a more traditional path generally have this opportunity where the wife in the family, new wife, joins the family to come and live in their house, whether either saving for a house or apartment, saving cash, or just generally that's kind of what's expected within the community. Any of those, take your pick. And most importantly, it becomes a very hard, difficult situation for the female in that scenario to adopt a new strategy in a new situation, which a lot of our clients put themselves in and have been in that situation when they're following that path. Like if you're not part of that, you're not a wife moving into an in-laws family, you probably don't want to listen to this episode. For those that do know, I've been working with the South Asian community for the last 7 years. And in those 7 years, I've had lots of experiences with the in-laws and the people moving into those houses and the individual challenges that come when it comes to the kitchen dynamics, the home dynamics, managing your body weight, managing other people's expectations, managing yourself around new people in a home that you're not used to. And this can be an often case. We speak to people on a week-to-week basis that say, Nathan, I've just moved into someone's house and I've gained 5 kilos because they don't eat the same way that I used to at home, or vice versa. I don't know how to be a vegetarian now that I used to be a meat eater at home and my family are different. I'm just finding that complexity really, really difficult. So with this scenario, we always have to look at the global situation. Where is my headspace as a coach coming into this to help you? Firstly, is if that scenario is going to be for plus 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, it is not going away anytime soon. It's not going to get better just by closing your eyes, praying for it, or just accepting the fat loss. It's actually going to be something that you'll want to look to navigate and nip at the bud as soon as possible. Now, a lot of these principles and practices that I give people in these moments are often overlooked because of the hardness that comes into having conversations and basically leaning in to what you believe rather than what they believe. There's a whole different situation. There's 3 situations I say within the food dynamics when you move in with the in-laws is going to be what they are doing, what you want to do, and then the locus of control that they have on their opinions around what you should be doing. Within their home, if you follow the very traditional route, the mum will still make the dinners. You may contribute in some way, shape, or form as the wife who's just come into the house, but majority will be lent in by a family that is already situated, always has a routine, already has food preferences, always have the takeaways on specific days. In my family, not that I had moved, like a girlfriend ever moved in with me with my family, but we had different days of specific things. Fish and chips on a Friday, roast dinner on a Sunday, chicken korma on a Tuesday from a jar. Sorry. And then on a Wednesday, we'd have something like fajitas. Now, that system isn't going to change just because someone else is coming into the mix. If anything, it's more reinforced, and that's kind of the culture and the community that we do. So if you are part of that, you'll be part of 3 bands. One in which you don't want to change the status quo. You don't want to change what's happening in the house because you're fearful of the nature of what you get back. Oh, are they going to say something? Is it going to cause a bit of a divide, a little bit of friction? I've only just moved in. What are they going to think? If you're on that camp of things, then that is going to be where we understand blending into the food that they're having, the portion sizes, how to make up for it, what to do in the daytime before you have the meal with them. On the flip side of things, if you have more locus of control, if it's a more, westernized family where anyone takes the food, there's no roles around the food. Your husband's cooking, the little son's cooking, the husband's making some bits and bobs, the auntie's bringing some bits in, whatever it is, and you're having a varied amount of food and there's no set rules around the kitchen, you can obviously have a little bit more flex, a little bit more variety, a little bit more control over the variables that you have. And in those scenarios, it's actually, really useful. Anytime you can control a variable, it is at your advantage. Every time you can control, what you're eating, what you're putting into your body, how many steps that you do, how much sleep you get, you've got a lot more control over the effect of what happens as a byproduct. The less you have control, the less you think you have control, the more you go off someone else's opinions of values and what they present in those scenarios and just keeping quote unquote people happy, you'll have less control over the outcome, and you're going to have to do some things around the outside to not end up in a situation where you gain 5, 10, 15 pounds. The same scenario of moving in with the in-laws is exactly why they call it the Dubai Stone, the university freshers 50, whatever pounds that you gain at university, or when you move country or go on holiday. they all exacerbate the same trait, the same beginning, the same, thought process, which is I'm in a new scenario, I'm doing something new, it's overwhelming, I haven't made my habits, my decisions, my kind of control, my structure, and I'm just going with the wind. I'm just gone, I'm just doing what everyone else is doing. I'm boozing at university. I've moved to a new country like Dubai where you gain like 10 pounds just by going to brunches on Sundays. You engulf yourself in that community. And that's what, people, wives will do when they move into the house. They will blend in. They will try and blend in. But if those families, which I've seen multiple times, those families don't follow good habitual processes, they're not quote unquote healthy, they don't make great food choices, or it's completely different to what you're used to, whether you're, a little bit more Western, you would have like fajitas and sushi, whereas these guys have like traditional, swaminari and the Jains, the no garlic, no onions, or they're just veggie. And that can be a hard like change for you. There is going to be that adjustment period, which is totally, totally normal. But in those scenarios, it's really important to, again, figure out what your locus of control is. So here's the top tips that I've got for you. If you are moving into a house and you don't want to cause a ruffle, you don't like friction, you don't like quote unquote confrontation, you want to be on your mum-in-law's best side, and you want to blend into the background and you just want to kind of have a peaceful life, which I fucking love. At that point, you have to understand that your goals of fat loss or maintenance or not gaining weight entirely relies on your portion sizes, your ability to not have seconds, and what you do in the rest of the day. Majority of the time, if you're working out or working from home or working from a coffee shop or something like that, or working from an office, breakfast and lunch and your snacks will be your choice. They'll be your decision. They'll be what you do. But then on the flip side is that in that evening meal, that'll be when you give locus of control to that individual, that mum that's making the food or the family are making a dish. And at that point, you can look at your day every day from Monday to Friday as you control 75% of your day. And that's what you spend your energy, your time doing to make it as best as possible, to make up for the fact that 25% of your evening is going to be whatever they're cooking at home in whichever way they want to. And I'm not going to say jack shit because I don't want to cause any riffraffs. And that's a really understanding. As well as that, for these people in that camp there, you are going to need to do a lot of exercise, because whether mum-in-law or bar or whoever's cooking bangs out the ghee or bangs out the portion sizes or really makes it an authority piece that you have to eat more, you don't want to gain the weight that those habits come with. You want to simply make up for it. It's not a long-term solution, but neither is probably living with your in-laws. And you'll want to put yourself in a scenario where you've got as much control as possible, whilst you then build the tolerance to start clawing back that 75 to 85 to 90 and then get what you want from the scenarios. There's plenty of scenarios where this has never been an issue for people that have moved in, because they have that, I guess, go-getter attitude. They have the other side of the coin, which is, I don't mind causing a few feathers. I'm going to value myself, what I put in my body, what I value my health to be done, my own priorities. I don't, really, I care about me more than I care about my mum-in-law's opinions. And they will go and do their own thing. They'll make their own food. They'll be inclusive when they want to be. They'll be exclusive when they think it's not of value to them. And those people will have a lot more control and a lot more, I guess, foresight on their intake of calories and food and the portion sizes that go in with that. And that can be super advantageous for the way that you look, the way that you feel, the way that you are motivated, the way that your health and fitness goals go. And most importantly, they'll be in control of how energized and good they feel. Most importantly, if someone else is controlling the food in that evening and it's not particularly useful, pizzas, the takeaways, the pal badgies every night, for example, they're going to catch up with you in terms of your energy, your mood, your health. It doesn't necessarily mean they're bad foods. They're not. And I promote that you would eat the traditional food at least some point, a part of a dieting phase, to understand how to do it, why to do it, and when to do it, and then what that looks like in the next 20 years. So you have control over every variable. But it does impact the way that you feel. If you're not used to that heavy food or the spices or the oils in it, you're going to feel sluggish, and you're going to feel sluggish by the portion size that you've had. And you can get into those habits of just feeling shit because of what you're putting into your body. So the more you have control over those, the more it's more useful for your energy, your mood, the things that you need. But we understand there's a little bit of a to and fro in because of the environment, because of how that's laid out, that it becomes incredibly difficult to manage. Now, the one thing that most people will avoid, and the most people that generally move away from, is the art of conversation. Now, within the community, I've done it long enough now, within the last 7 years, to know that there are taboo subjects, There are things that should and shouldn't be done, and there are things in which are perceived as a negative, around food, saying no to food, or kind of laying your own claim on things. But you have to look at this way. At what point are you going to let someone else dictate your feelings, your body's shape, how you look, how you feel, how you're motivated, how your energy levels are? At some point, something's got to give. And there's a large part of people that just give into the mother-in-laws. They give into what everyone else is saying, not rocking the boat. And then they end up just feeling shit, lethargic, low energy, and they feel trapped. I've spoke to a lot of women that are in that 28 to 40 bracket that are living at their in-laws' house, feeling trapped with their decisions. They have very little control or autonomy on their decisions. They always get scrutinized for their decisions. And, outside of the status quo of what the five people around them believe, they end up being guilt, shamed, triggered, pushed out. And then most people then just go into their own box. They sink into I just don't want to have more comments about me. I'm fucking sick of my auntie saying how fat I am, or I'm sick of, my auntie telling me I need to eat more, and I'm just fucking exhausted by the whole process. So then by sinking to those demands, you end up falling into those patterns and feeding everybody else with your subdued communication, and not feeding yourself, and you end up feeling shitty. There's a large part of my life where I nearly got kicked out by my dad because of how I wanted food to be cooked and how I didn't want what he was offering. I remember the day so vividly because probably the day, only 2 days in my life, my dad had probably nearly considered to punch me, or that I know of anyway. One of them was when we were playing with USB sticks, and basically he slapped me with a USB stick, lightly, wasn't abuse. And then I didn't do anything for like 2 hours, and I just plotted my revenge. And basically went up to him behind his back and slapped him so hard in his back that I left a mark for like 4 weeks. At that point, I thought he was going to throw hands with me for sure. My mum was holding him back and stuff like that. That was crazy. But on the second time was when I went into the kitchen after kind of saying that I was going to go on this diet and that, I'm not going to eat your food. And that whole riffraff started. And my dad was like, okay, well, that evening meal is mine. I cook that for you. I cook this as a generosity thing, and this is my way of giving love. Hence why I can understand the South Asian community, because that's what my dad was doing. My dad's a foodie, fatty, whichever one you want to call it. He loved food, and so does all of our family. So when he was in those scenarios, he was genuinely disheartened because I was changing the dynamic of the kitchen. And it was more about the fact of like doing something different, 2 meals, different way of cooking. It's not the usual routine, more energy on their side to plate out 2 different option things. And I remember seeing him how much oil he put on a dish. And I was like, at that point, very much like, fuck, like, what the fuck are you doing? That's 500 calories of oil, Don't do that in my dish. I'm trying to lose weight. And at that point, that was the second palm of hands that he was going to try and push on me. So I understand what it's like to have that. But what I learned from that scenario that you can put into this scenario is that without communication, without actually having this something to stand for, you'll always just have what everyone else has given you. And you'll be, I don't want to say a bitch to it, but like you will be helpless, or thought to be helpless, because you're considering someone else instead of yourself. And yet that can be very thoughtful in nature. But when you're suffering or getting negative returns, it's not a useful, metric of what you want to do. And the communication within the South Asian community is very much like people, like there's levels of respect to certain people. You don't speak to people certain ways. People speak to you a certain way, and that's okay. But when you challenge it backwards, that's not okay. There's a large amount of complexities that I've seen firsthand dating within the community, and also just being around family members' houses and clients' houses, that would showcase these traits and behaviors. And I noticed that in the families that were more lenient towards a quote unquote healthy lifestyle, or their sons or daughters or cousins adopting this new, fresh health approach, was that these people actually communicated the best. They actually vocalized their opinions without there being a thought of like, oh, am I going to rock the boat? They kind of were something where they were not afraid to rock the boat or have their opinion stand for. And until you voice your opinion, until you communicate, people don't know what you're thinking. People don't know how you feel, and they don't know what they can do to help, because most people just want to help, especially if you're new to the family. They just want to help you in some way, shape, or form, but their version of helping is maybe your hindrance. I remember the time where I had a girlfriend once, and I was doing a photo shoot, And a week before the photo shoot, she thought helping was buying me a large box of Haribo to celebrate the fact that I was only a week away. In her head, it was celebration. It was like, you've done a really good job. Here's a fucking massive box of the favorite Haribo that you like. I like the eggs and the colas. You just got those specific ones and got like a kilo worth. In my mind, I was livid because she'd done something to help. All I saw was this food in front of me that she knew I was dieting. She knew I was trying to be disciplined. She knew I was on the fucking cusp of breaking down because I was so hungry and tired. And I felt it was a negative. So her positive was my negative. And the way I reacted was her negative too. But what I learned from that scenario that you'll need to take into consideration when you're looking at moving in and staying in and actually making a useful turn to your own goals and what you want is that you'll need to communicate how you feel about the particular things and how that their showcase of whatever they're showcasing is not particularly conducive. And it all comes down to, unfolding the style of communication. So if you want a style of communication, here's how you run it. You need three things to have meaningful conversation with someone that you're kind of scared to have a conversation with. One is you need to see it from their perspective. So I understand that this happens and you do this and you do this and you do this, and I'm really appreciative of it. So if I had a mum-in-law, I'd be like, hey, like I do this sometimes when I'm with my girlfriend's family. They're Arabic, so it's like they're Lebanese. They basically have the same traits around food as well. Is, hey, I understand that more food is awesome and you've made a great selection and like your food is amazing and I really really enjoy it. But from on my side at the moment in time, having a lot more food than what I'm having right now is too much for the goals that I have, and it actually takes me away from where I want to go to. So by eating less food, it doesn't mean that I actually care for your food less or like it less or appreciate you less. It's that the portions of the food is what I'm trying to cut down on right now. So that's why I'm going to take a reduced amount and I'd appreciate. And the third part is get them on your side. I would appreciate if when we make food, I could portion my own food out to make myself feel great, to get my benefits I want, whilst I'm also being inclusive of your food. And if you want an extra bonus point, it's like the way I can be inclusive with your food, the way that I can have your food and enjoy it and not have to make my own separate food is that I portion it out. It's the only metric that I have to look at. Otherwise, if I want to have all of your food all of the time and not worry about the ingredients, I'd have to make my own food if I wasn't in that scenario where I could portion things out. So I either make my own food or I choose to have less of a portion than maybe what you're anticipating. So can I get your support on this? Now, if you just take that and you carbon copy it right on a script, and the first time that you write it, it fucking hurts and it sucks and it's really hard to say. But once you've said it once, and once you say it to a friend, family member, a partner, like all of these facets are still the same. If you got a partner that you used to going out and getting absolutely smashed with and doner kebabs and eating Friday, Saturday, Sunday with, and now you're changing your health, same rules apply. Ask for their help, ask for their thing, tell them that it's not about their own, like the way that we're doing things, it's not about them, it's about what I want to do. And at the same time as well, family members, friends, it's the same thing. You have to, see it from their perspective, explain your stance, and then ask for their support. You'll never go wrong on that. And when the first time you do anything like that, if you've never had that opportunity, you'll be nervous, you'll be shaking, you'll be like wondering if it's even worth it. But when you get onto the other side of actually communicating the way that most people actually like and the way that human nature is revolved, you'll find that you get a more positive response. And then bonus points is that you'll actually get them to help you out. They'll come back to you in a week and go, hey, can I help with any of the food? Can I change some of the things around in my food to make it better for you? They'll come and show their support in a different way because you've communicated that the way that they had food doesn't often lead to positives for you in those things. So they will ask for support and they will navigate that as best as possible. But it always comes down to voicing your opinion. And if you're scared to do that and you're not willing to have that conversation, then you also can't be willing to get the benefits of controlling your food. You might always be to the wind with your goals and your fat loss and your maintenance and your fat gain because you won't have these conversations. Because if every single day you have to use a lot of mental strength to say, no, I don't want that, I don't want that, I don't want that, at some point you're going to give. So it's better to control the input and the output. The input is getting the mum on the side or the family members on the side so they stop asking you as frequently, which helps. And then the other side is that you get used to saying no, your discipline, your levels of structure, your portion sizes, and then both can live in harmony. They'll ask you less, which means that you have to use discipline less, and you'll have to use less of your discipline around portion sizes because you'll be asked less and less food will be presented. It's a win-win scenario. And just because you have to say no doesn't mean it's a bad thing. I was at an Indian function for when I dated in the Indian community. I was getting introduced to a friends and family, and I remember I had to say no 8 times for a Diet Coke. 8 times for a Diet Coke. And in those moments, I recognized, oh, I can see how people fold. I can see how people on the 6th time will just go, all right, then, just shut up. All right, just give me it. Just go out my way. Stop bothering me. Give me it. I just want to blend in. Stop making a big thing out of it. Just give me whatever you're offering. And in those moments, you lose. And those moments are the ones that, you recognize that just because you've said no, you've done the right thing. It's not necessarily true. Like, you have to say no to completion where they stop asking to be an effective habit. If you say no once and then say yes the second time, you're actually treating them and teaching them the habit of asking again, because last time you caved after the 3rd no. So if I say no 3 times, I'll get him on the 4th, and then I can get validated. That's what happens within the mothers or the people that are offering food. It's like they will, my mom and dad, when I was dieting, they knew how to pick my buttons when, we were out for dinner or going to fish and chips on a Friday or, sitting in front of the TV with the snacks. They'd be like, oh, do you want, I'm getting some biscuits. Do you want some biscuits? I'd be like, no. And they'd be like, well, I've got your favorite ones. And I'd be like, no. And then they'd be like, well, what about one? And I'd be like, no. Like, oh, one, you've been good today. I'll just have one. I'm like, no. And the next one, they'd be like, well, I've got you your favorite ones, the ice cream that goes with this, and this is really like healthy. And at that point, I'm tired. I've had a full day of it. I just wanted to sit on the sofa and relax. And then you say yes. And then now, every evening, the same conversation happens in some way, shape, or form, because they've been taught that you will give in when you say enough of the right things. So when you're trying to build habits around the people when you're moving into the in-laws, you have to say no to completion until they shut up and go away. If you want to build a habit, it doesn't matter if you said it 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, 8 times, like I did with that Diet Coke. You just have to say it enough times that they will move away from the conversation because they feel awkward. And that's what the goal is when you're looking at setting habits and behaviors in those scenarios. And yeah, you might seem rude, but like I said, you don't have to do this. You don't have to say no 8 times if you don't want to. But if you're struggling with your control of your eating, or you're gaining your weight, or you'll feel like that scenario in the mother-in-law's house or the in-law's house is controlling you aren't controlling it, and you're unhappy with that, and the gap between it is a conversation or saying no multiple times, you have to get over that. That has to be something that you have to work on. Otherwise, you can just sit in the back and you can gain your weight, and you can struggle with your yo-yo dieting. You can struggle with your intake of calories and wonder why you're not getting results. But in these moments, when you've moved in the in-laws in 6 months, 12 months time, and you've gained your weight, these will be the situations that you'll look back on and go, oh yeah, if I would have had that conversation, I wouldn't have had all of these negative ramifications. And it doesn't mean that you can't have a great time with them. It doesn't mean that you can't sit there and go, oh, go on, give us a pav bhaji tonight if you're having one, or you're making them. Or, oh, it's Diwali, or like, let's get some of that jabali, let's get some gulab jambo. Let's do that. Let's have a few of these. Let's enjoy it. But if every day for 365 days, you've got this quest and this conversation to have, and it's not being had, and you're over consuming because of it, then we need to work on that 80% being rigid to what you need versus what someone else wants. And that is how to eat in the mother-in-law's house. And that's not from fucking a textbook. Like, I couldn't have read that anywhere, right? I've sat with clients struggling with this thing. I've sat in the house where I've seen the in-law have these trials and tribulations, because I was at the dinner table at the same time, seeing her get forced to have another roti or another spoonful of rice, and her looking at me in distress, going, "What do I do?" And then seeing what that's like in scenarios where I've been to clients' houses and how they've tried to make me do those things, and it is tough. But I tell you what's tougher: not being happy in yourself and not enjoy the way that you look, and wake up every morning and look at your belly and think, fuck, I hate this, or not being confident in your new dress, or waking up with low energy because you've had triple the portions than you should have last night, or you had an extra sweet that you made you feel shit and made you sleep bad. They feel worse day to day than just having a conversation in the short term. Short-term conversations suck. Long-term, they make everything better. So that's Gora the Explorer, episode number 2. Hopefully you enjoyed. Let me know your feedback and comment below if you want any specific topics that you want me to cover around the South Asian indie community that you think are quite taboo, and how to solve them as best as we can do. I'm here for all of it. Have a nice one. Chat to you soon.